This week in comic books, DC gives us a couple of good comic books out there that I think really teach some really valuable lessons I think we can all learn from. In Marvel, we get some reminders of characters, and we have a few books out there that I'm not sure why they were made, other than unless it's an economic decision. And we'll kind of break those down a little bit too for you. All that and a few other comic books, but first, allow me to try to sell you some coffee, because it's good coffee. Try it out. Hey, what's going on, folks? This is your boy Pocan Joe to talk to you about Coffee Brand Coffee. We serve people that are tired of gimmicky advertising and branded companies that want to lecture you. At Coffee Brand Coffee, all we want to do is serve you freshly roasted coffee wherever you're at, whenever you want it. Consider Coffee Brand Coffee. Check us out, check our reviews out, and use promo code POCANJOE or the link down in the description to save yourself some money. Give me the opportunity to get you a delicious cup of coffee. All right, you wonderful weirdos, we're back. It's another comic book haul and review week. Last week I had to give you kind of a short video. I apologize for that, but life sometimes gets in the way, so we had to take care of life first. But let's kick this week off with Absolute Power #1. I had to go with this cover. Given all the other covers that came with it, I don't know. I just wasn't feeling them. But this is going to be an interesting story and also familiar. This is a comic book trope that generally happens. What happens when the villain takes away the superhero's power? And that's exactly what Amanda Waller did in this, but they did it in a unique way because she's thinking like Batman. She has to think of all the contingencies. So right now, as she puts together her team, which consists of a character that was manufactured by Brainiac, acts like Brainiac. It's kind of a system controls type of thing through the internet. Handles deep fakes, so there's something relevant to today with false information and false media and things like that. Altered. I don't know. It shows the superheroes kind of doing bad things when they're really not. They're deep fakes, in other words. We got a Uber Batman robot that's kind of like a hive mind for the Amazo army. You may remember Amazo. He can kind of mimic and subdue superhero powers as a whole, as a robot. A little bit of woo-woo in that, but all right, well, let's go with it. And she's also made a treaty, right, with aliens, right, to keep people from jumping into other dimensions and stuff like that. In other words, no escape plan for the heroes in this either. She takes away their powers and kind of takes like an absolute control over everything using absolute power. This is kind of unique and kind of ingenious. So what will the superheroes do? They have no powers. They can't run away. They have to stand their ground and fight, but they have to do it as if it was you and me going against these amazing, super-powered robots. Robots is kind of a trope in this, really, but it is what it is. I like this. I like it when the writer takes so much time and detail to make sure that there's no way out of this, that's hopefully something unique and original comes out of it. Given a first issue, I'm kind of speculating a little bit on the story as far as that goes, but I'm kind of excited about it all at the same time. How vicious can Amanda Waller get? I think we're about to find out. It was also really good to see that this kind of affects everybody, like most crisis events, right? It kind of covered, like, there's no random team out there that's excluded from this, right? They're all having to suffer with this. And I think that's probably what makes this the most interesting book in DC to date, really. It's kind of unique. So I like this. So yeah. Moving on. Let's go to Justice Society of America Unity. Just picked the generic cover for it. Went with that route. This is kind of just picking up off this new lore that we've created with the Justice League of America, where we're kind of bringing in that golden age aspect of the team as a whole, but updating them as well using the Huntress, the new Huntress, Batwoman and Batman's daughter from the future, travels to the past to establish the JSA again, but also to kind of use it as a rehabilitation, right? Selecting a few to kind of be on the team to kind of teach them how to be good guys now instead of just being villains. There's some interesting characters in there following, again, a lot of your similar tropes, familiar but new, right? They kind of have that aspect going on with it, but then they're also dealing with this kind of weird perception vibe that's kind of going on. So when you have somebody, or when you have a team and you rehabilitate, you should be expecting some hiccups, right? Like you can't change somebody's nature overnight. I think that's really what this book is trying to present to you. It also brings up the fallacy of, knowing what you know now means you can predict the future. It's not necessarily true in any real sense, but there are markers, right? Risk assessments that you can kind of throw into it. So I find that interesting when they take the Mordru character, who is famed as a villain in the Legion of superheroes. That would be a future team. But we're in the past, and try to rehabilitate him now to see if it changes the future in any way. That's interesting because the Legion of Superheroes, they don't see it that way, and they're showing up. So we're going to get superhero team battle here for the sake of one person. That kind of brings up a whole nother interesting aspect to it. How many people are you willing to sacrifice to save one person's humanity, right? Or their ability to be able to be better, right? I think that's interesting. Unethical things that kind of happen in here, and I'll leave that up to you. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. But Mordru, of course, wants to prove himself to be a hero, so he can be a little zealous. Remember when we talked about the hiccups? So they're battling Gentleman Ghost in this. He's got an army raised, unleashes Surtur, a god demon being from hell. And Mordru's like, hey, Hawkman. He's the immortal Hawkman. I'll just take his life force, essentially killing him, and put it into Gentleman Ghost because it's the ghost aspect that allows him to control, to be the conduit to all these living beings, dead beings, being resurrected, I think would be the correct way to put that. So he takes it from him knowing that he's immortal, so he'll come back to life. He reincarnates all the time. Makes Gentleman Ghost a living person, which kind of dispels all the magic woo-woo that happened at that point. And of course, Hawkman recovers. Now the question is, Hawkman feels that death every single time, and he's flooded with the memories of all of his deaths all at one time. So was this an effective way to combat this? Was there another way? We don't know, because they didn't bother explaining any other possibilities to it. But given the circumstances, did he have the right to take somebody's life, regardless if he knew he came back or not, to do that to somebody? I think that's interesting. Didn't even tell him. I think you'd at least tell the guys, like, hey, I'm about to do this. I think that would have been a nice middle ground there. So all in all, great story. I think fantastic things are going to come out of this. Great action scenes in it. And the art is just fun. You can see everything in it, and it's just intriguing to read. Enough about that one. Let's jump on to the next one. Speaking of fallacies, the week of fallacies. Okay, let's talk about Boy Wonder. This is issue number 3. This is where Damian Wayne kind of teams up in this sort of artificial story that's going on about him and Tim Drake working together. And again, this is all perspective. If you've seen any of the reviews, I've been chasing this down since issue 1. And it's kind of, how does Damian deal being the real son of Bruce Wayne with all these kind of stepkids that Bruce Wayne has, and all of them being Robins. And at this one, Tim Drake is a unique Robin because he knows how to be sneaky. Not sneaky like, haha, tricks from the belt, but more socially tricky with people. In other words, he instills confidence in people so they tell him things, and then he can use those things back against them. And that's kind of the point of this story. Damian has a problem with Tim Drake and sees the way he's interacting with people, but doesn't understand the full story. So he makes a judgment call on him, right? No matter what he does at this point, he already thinks poorly of him, so anything he does is automatically self-fulfilling or whatever in that case. Worst case scenario is what he believes that he's doing. right? But in fact, he's trying to get that information so they can go and find out where this demon comes from that's been haunting him throughout these issues and what the connection is, especially when you're in a place with a bunch of rich people that donate just for the sole source to get something back, tax deductions, back money coming back to their charities, whatever the case may be. That is something that happens. Like I've been advised on these kind of things before. Hey, if you donate to this thing and your organization wants to be a benefit, it actually comes back. You see what I'm going with that? It can be kind of weird. And yes, people do that, and it is a little loophole in the tax deduction thing. But for the most part, if good comes out of it all, what difference does it make? But back to the story. The interesting thing about this is, and we see this in real life, when you have a problem with somebody in some way, shape, or form, nothing they do is considered to be good or beneficial. It's always this kind of self-talk you do to yourself, right? Or even with a group of people, where you sit there and you say, oh, they're just doing it because blank, whatever the horrible thing is that you want to associate the person with. And that's just unfair. It's an unfair argument to assume that because you don't like somebody, everything they do is a horrible bad thing. That's a fallacy. You really shouldn't do that. Nobody's that bad. I take that back. There are some people in history that aren't that good. But for the most part, majority-wise, most people aren't that bad. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Werewolf by Night, brought to us by Marvel. I went with this cover, super cool cover. It's a tie-in to the Blood Hunt storyline that's been going on. Again, something else we've been reviewing here. Mostly the main story, but I pick up a couple of the tie-ins every now and then. This is an unnecessary tie-in, right? This is just to say, hey, we have a character we haven't used in a while. We need to remind people that this character exists, Werewolf by Night. And even if you're a hard collector, this more modern take on him being a Native American, which makes sense, and being able to learn to control his rage, right? That's really what this story is about. One of the coping mechanisms he uses to keep himself under control when he's the werewolf is music. And that's a very typical coping mechanism for people with various issues, rage, overeating, smoking, whatever the case may be. Instead of doing the act, substituting it with something like music. But what happens when the artificial thing that you need gets taken away from you? Well, rage ensues. And that happens in this book as our character travels to some place where he's going to kind of work out his powers a little bit. Come to find out, some kids are resurrecting a demon. Turns out to be the uncle of one of the kids that are doing it. And it goes on a killing rampage. And then at the same time, and this is the tie-in, the moon goes away, of course, and the vampires see all this happening, right? Because the world's run by vampires now, and they attack. So all hell breaks loose, and it's just a bloodbath throughout this thing. I thought that was interesting for the most part, but really this was just hey, we haven't done anything with this character in a while. It was kind of an unnecessary, oh, this also happened in Blood Hunt type of thing. I'm not really onto it that much. Next, keeping on with Marvel, we get Marvel Wolverine Deep Cuts. Okay, so yeah, if you haven't seen trailer 3 yet for the Wolverine Deadpool movie that's coming out, or Deadpool Wolverine, they introduced Sabretooth. It's going to be in it. It looks like it's going to be the original actor from what I can tell. So the question for the normies out there that don't read comic books, who is this guy? You're like, I vaguely remember the movie from way back in the day, but like, really, who is this character? And this kind of describes the relationship between Wolverine and Sabretooth and why that conflict exists. It's a lot of narration explaining that to you. Yes, there is its own little backstory here now that the X-Men storyline, the Krakoa era, right, has ended, and they're kind of moving forward. Everybody thinks the X-Men are dead. Yada, 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 yada. Superficial storytelling. And that's all this really is, really. It's just that relationship. But it did it something slightly different at the end. Instead of just leaving it as the constant curse of them two always in battle, we get introduced to Mr. Sinister. If you don't know who Mr. Sinister is, he's probably one of the most sadistic X-Men villains of all time. My argument, right? Minus what they did to him in the Krakoa era of X-Men. Like before that, he's kind of a everything's my play toy, and making clones is my thing. And we find out it's actually a clone fight. I hate the trope of a clone. I hate that. Oh, it's almost as bad as it's really a robot, right? But I think it's a new introduction into Mr. Sinister and kind of bringing him forward and giving him the light for the sinister, hence his name, right, character that he is. So for that part, I thought it was okay. Is it a necessary story? Not necessarily. We could have done something else to introduce the character in some other way, shape, or form, but because a movie's coming out, ta-da, economics. Okay. Moving on. Let's talk about Spider-Man Reign. This is issue 2. So think of this as a Spider-Man Reign volume 2, right? So you're going to be picking it up, you're going to be reading it, and it's going to be picking up from a storyline that you may not have read or forgotten about, really. But basically the kind of premise of this is Peter Parker, our Spider-Man, has been kind of chained up and put into a virtual reality thing where he gets to live his best life for whatever reason. Doesn't really matter. That's all volume 1. I suggest checking it out, but not relevant to this story. In this one, a new character. It's the first appearance of Kitty Cat, a cat-like character. Think Black Cat. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a relation there. Tries to free him because the city of Manhattan is just run by Fisk in this futuristic dystopia thing where nobody really has freedoms, but you kind of give the illusion of freedom and protection so you can take more rights away from people. Yeah, I'm going to let that simmer for a second. Anyway, so to get him he's old now, he's groggy, talking about Spider-Man, we got to kind of throw him back into the mix, and the only way to really save a future that you live in now is to stop it in the beginning, which means we got a time travel story. So they zoom off into the past. The artwork in this it's unique. And some points it's good, and some points it kind of loses me. But for the most part, all in all, I find this to be an enjoyable story. I think this is going to be one of the hot stories of the summer that people will be talking about, especially if they keep adding characters into this. All right, moving on. Oh, old man Miles Morales makes a point or an appearance in this too. And seeing Miles Morales as an old man, not what I pictured in this. So if you're a Miles Morales fan, be prepared. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about economics in a second. Check this out. So, Shatar, number 1 came out. The female member of the Thundercats team, if you will. I'm not sure why this book is made. Well, I have an idea. But first, let me tell you a story. This is to do nothing than to solidify the fact that Shatara was kind of a mother figure to Lion-O back in the day, right? And this is a pre-Third World, right, origin, if you will, just before it all kicked off, right? And their life on Thundera and how it worked and what her role kind of was in the hierarchy of society there. Who cares? Like, I don't... these books that are coming out with these kind of relimbed... It's not even... You can't even call it a re-origin or a reimagination of anything, really. They're just talking. And I think I know why they're doing this. So Thundercats comes out, right? And Thundercats, all in all, as a piece of property, does okay on its own. They got their main story going now, where they've relaunched them, keeping very true to the original format, but changing up character designs. This book is nothing more than volume-based economics. I'll break that down for you. Generally, when you have a business, you set into two types of economic forms, right? Unique, niched, rare, not a lot of it, usually cost more, right? And then you have this kind of other where it's volume based, right? So think of the gourmet hamburger place in your town that charges $25, $30 for a hamburger, some fries, soda, whatever the case may be. The word artisan gets used, gourmet. They may throw some other ingredients in it to kind of up the price a little bit. And then you have the generic McDonald's hamburger, right? They pump it out in volume. It is what it is. You get it, you eat it, boom, right? One costs more than the other. I think what they're doing here is they're trying to give you, for the same price, right, just more volume. And I think that's all this is. Just keep putting the word Thundercats on it, keep making it the characters, and keep pumping it out there. And don't worry about making it truly unique, original, or anything like that. Just keep pumping it out there so we can say, hey, Thundercats are hot again. Let's do some more with it. I think that's kind of what we're going with here. I hope it's not. I hope I'm wrong about that. Okay, moving on. So Scarlet, issue number 2. So kind of issue 2 kind of went generic, right? This is what we call an in-between issue here on the channel. This is just information dump and something to get the plot moving forward to where it makes more sense. Scarlet has to save Jinx. Jinx is part of a ninja clan right now as an operative in it. So Scarlet has to join so she can get in there and find out what they're doing, save her friend, and beat feet out of there. Bam. That's all you got to do. But for some reason, the ninja clan wants, before they let Scarlet join, right? She's already proved she can fight. So now we need to prove duty, honor, and loyalty. And what better way to do that in a ninja clan than to go steal something that they want you to steal? Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at in this book. I'm calling it in between issue right now, meaning not very important, but just something to push the plot forward. We'll see where this goes later, but all in all, unnecessary. Could just fought and move the story forward. The whole stealing something is not relative, so I don't know. So that's my comic book haul and review this week. What did you think? What did you pick up and what am I missing? Definitely let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that other cool stuff. It's going to be around here someplace. I lost my direction, but it's there. And keep your eyes open. We have some more independent comic reviews coming. In issue 1, our first issue 2, and of course our comic book story time where you get to read comic books from my private collection that I usually have on Mondays and Fridays for you as my gift for 2024. Other than that, I don't have anything else. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.